Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date stories in the global financial world.
Luxembourg abolished fares for trains, trams and buses on February 29th in what the government said was a bid to tackle road congestion and pollution, as well as supporting low earners. All standard class journeys on public transport in the tiny and wealthy European country are now free of charge, compared to an annual pass worth €440 before. Travellers can still pay for first class at a cost of €660 a year. Transport Minister Francois Bosch stressed that the main reason is to have a better quality of mobility, and the side reason is also for environmental advantages. Luxembourg has just over 600,000 inhabitants, but 214,000 more travel in for work every day from neighbouring Germany, Belgium and France, causing heavy traffic jams as the majority of workers commute by car. More than half of Luxembourg's greenhouse gas emissions come from transport. To cope with the many commuters, Luxembourg plans to invest €3.9 billion in railways from 2018 to 2028, upgrade the bus network, and add more park and ride sites on the border. Despite these investments, the government expects 64% of commuters to still get to work by car in 2025, down from 73% in 2017. Luxembourg is the first country to roll out free transport, but some cities, including Estonian capital Tallinn, have also experimented with the idea.
Italian authorities have shut schools, universities, museums, cinemas and theaters across much of northern Italy as a new coronavirus outbreak worsens. But a school near the city of Milan is using digital technology so children do not miss lessons. In Bareggio, about 20 kilometers from Milan, 37-year-old schoolteacher Alessio Villarosa kept on teaching Italian, geography and history despite the closures for a second consecutive week in 3 northern Italian regions in an effort to contain the outbreak. Students at Giorgio Perlasca Middle School were already used to this kind of digital teaching after the school introduced the concept to allow pupils to learn at home before classes. Lombardy, Veneto, and Emilia-Romagna have accounted for more than 90% of some 900 confirmed cases of the virus that have so far come to light in Italy, as well as at 21 fatalities. Looking to halt the spread of the highly infectious disease, the government last week banned public gatherings across much of northern Italy and shuttered educational centers. The disease is concentrated in just a few areas, and some locals had hoped that schools in places with few or no coronavirus cases could now reopen. The government is growing increasingly concerned about the economic impact of the virus, which has struck the industrial heartland of the Eurozone's third largest economy. Meanwhile, Italy's Trenitalia began sanitizing the interiors of their fleet of trains this week as the country prepared to return to normal following fears of coronavirus. Trenitalia operates the high-speed Frecciarossa trains, which link Italy to the rest of Europe and links major towns throughout the country. The number of people using the trains has dwindled over the last week, despite the fact the lockdown area of the outbreak is focused on a small cluster of towns around 60 kilometers from Milan.
Coronavirus is only a problem if it lasts for months, but not weeks, said Pedro Dante Guimarães, a Brazilian economist and president of the biggest government-owned financial institution in Latin America, Caixa Econômica Federal. Wall Street plunged in a volatile trading session heading into the weekend, extending a steep sell-off from last week as the fast-spreading coronavirus raised fears of a global recession. The three main stock indices barred losses, and the Nasdaq briefly turned positive on gains in technology stocks including Microsoft and chip makers Nvidia and Qualcomm. However, the Dow Jones Industrial slumped more than 1,000 points during the session, and if the index closes below this level, it would be its fifth 1,000-point decline in history and the third this week. He said the virus has affected mostly Brazilian exports so far, but has had no impact on domestic numbers, and added he visited NYSE on Friday to talk to investors about Brazilian economy and its financial institutions. The institution he runs is preparing to float its insurance unit. It will be listed in Brazil, although the banks expect to market the offering in the US, expecting to value it at around $14.77 billion. He stressed that the initially scheduled for April, the IPO could be delayed by coronavirus until June, adding that the government is not planning a privatization of the Econômica Federal, but there are talks about joint ventures and other collaborations for some of the company's units, such as cards and asset management businesses. New York is banning the disruption of single-use plastic bags statewide on Sunday, a move with the ambitious goal of reducing the billions of discarded bags that stream annually into landfills, rivers, and oceans. The law forbids most businesses from handing out the thin bags that are in supermarkets, making New York the third state to ban the bags after California, where a ban has already changed the way millions of people shop, and Oregon, where one took effect last month. New Yorkers currently use 23 billion plastic bags each year, state officials say, many of which end up as one of the most problematic forms of garbage. They blow across streets and become caught in trees. They harm birds and marine creatures. They clog sorting machines, making recycling them cumbersome. Measures in other countries and localities have significantly reduced plastic bag use, and a study in Washington found a 5-cent bag fee there had cut down on plastic pollution in waterways. The laws, including a de facto ban in Hawaii, where all counties forbid such bags, also aim to address climate change by reducing the planet-warming emissions from making the petroleum-based bags. California's ban led to a 72% drop in plastic bag use, although the law passed narrowly in a referendum and opinions on it remain divided. Implementation was relatively smooth. Previous attempts to ban single-use plastic bags in New York or to impose a charge for them were met with concerns about cost, cleanliness, and burdens on low-income residents. In 2016, the New York City Council voted to approve a 5-cent plastic bag fee, but Governor Andrew M. Cuomo blocked it. Mr. Cuomo then set up a task force to study the issue and in 2018 proposed the state law based on its findings. The bill was one of a raft of environmental measures to pass in 2019 after the Democrats took control of both houses of the legislature.
The UN Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, said on Tuesday, February 25th, British exports to the European Union could fall by as much as 14% if the two sides are unable to strike a free trade agreement, and even with one could be 9% lower. The imposition of tariffs under a no-deal scenario would crimp trade, with the effect amplified by so-called non-tariff measures such as quotas, licensing, and regulatory measures protecting health, safety, and the environment. NTMs would double the negative impact of tariffs and could lead to an overall $32 billion hit to British exports, according to the UN Conference on Trade and Development. a study released on Tuesday. The agriculture, food and beverages, and wood and paper sectors seem particularly exposed, it found, with a weaker impact on electrical and machinery, metal products, chemicals, and textiles and apparel. It noted NTMs affect more than 80% of trade in developed counties and more than 90% in the European Union. Britain left the EU in January and aims to negotiate a deal on future relations by the end of this year, when the Brexit transition period expires. According to the UNCTAD, even if a standard free trade agreement emerged from the talks, British exports to the EU could still drop by 9%, dealing a major economic blow as a single market absorbs 46% of Britain's sales abroad. In a no-deal scenario, Ireland's exports to the United Kingdom are expected to drop 10% as a result of non-tariff measures and tariffs, the study, based on 25 years of data, found. On the other hand, exports from developing countries into Britain and to a smaller extent into the European Union could increase if Britain does not increase tariffs for third countries, it added. The study did not estimate the impact of a soft exit scenario that largely maintains the status quo, saying much depends on the details of the relation that results.
Business Review, your daily source for the most critical stories in the financial world. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.